Hello, thank you for joining us on this Monday morning. Um, Particularly, thank you to all of the parents and grandparents who are joining us who may have a house full of kids today that you normally wouldn't have on a Monday, as well as maybe working from home and all of the things that we're managing. So delightful to have you here. My name is Nicole Ingrand, and I am the owner and director of Rivers Edge Counseling Center. We are located in St. Albert, Alberta, although right now we are meeting our clients all over the place in their home offices, in their cars and garages and park benches, and really wherever they can find some quiet, private space for an hour for some self-care. We have always done video and phone counseling, and we're particularly grateful now to be able to do that and to continue to support our existing clients and new clients through what is proving to be a really challenging time for all of us. Our team consists of over 20 therapists, psychologists, and counselors, as well as an amazing admin support team who helps people find the right fit for them, find a therapist who can help them meet their goals. We have Wellness Matters talks a couple of times a month. We always have. We usually invite people into our space and spend some time in that way. So again, we're just really grateful to be able to keep doing what we're doing, but in a bit of a different way, and to meet with you all here in this space virtually for a bit of time to talk about some things that will help us to get through this time well as individuals and families in the best way that we can. Our presenter today is Andrea Thrall, who has been on our team for a few years now, and she's been a psychologist for over 10. Andrea has experience in training and provides services for adults, for children, for teens, for families, for couples. She kind of does it all, and she does it really well, and we're so grateful to have her on our team. Andrea's background includes working in school settings, not-for-profits, and when she works with kids, Andrea does play therapy. So she spends a lot of time in our playroom when she's on site and doing play therapy virtually too with the kiddos that she sees. She uses cognitive behavioral therapy, solution-focused therapy, and mindfulness-based stress management as some of the things that she integrates in her practice. Andrea herself is a parent. She has a big, wonderful blended family with 4 kids. So she comes at this in a very authentic way of knowing the challenges normally of parenting, but especially in this time too. So also as a parent myself, I'm really looking forward to hearing how I can up my game a little bit as a parent and kind of meet this challenge as best as I can too. When Andrea isn't busy with all of that, her practice and her family, she likes to knit. She likes to ski, and she's got some fur babies, I'm told, some kittens she likes to spend some time with too. So thank you, Andrea, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Nicole. And yeah, thank you to everybody who has signed up and tuned in to this presentation. I am nervous-sighted about the morning and what it will hold. I'm really looking forward to sharing with you the sort of tips and ideas and strategies and personal challenges and triumphs that are part of pandemic parenting. So I was telling my girls the title of this webinar is Positive Pandemic Parenting, kind of a play on the triple P. They said, ooh, mom, alliteration. And yeah, so I'm feeling quite proud to start off with that. All right, so I'm going to bring up my slideshow to ground this talk. So you can follow along, and then I believe after the presentation is posted on our website, there'll also be handouts available there, so you can come back to our website to access those. So our outline for today is to review the brain. So I'd like to give you an introduction to the various structures and layers in the brain. We'll talk about what these parts of our brain like and how they get it. We're going to talk about how the current pandemic might be impacting our brains, and we'll talk about how we can provide soothing to each layer of these brains. Lastly, I'd like to provide you with some resources that I myself have found helpful as a parent and just as an individual. So all of this focus will be on brain. It's applicable to both our children and to ourselves.
So we're talking about the triune model of the brain. There's 3 layers in the brain. The first layer that develops is the lizard brain. And in your diagram there, that's the red brain stem part. The next layer that develops is the blue part there. It's called the limbic system. It's involved in relationships and connection, feeling a bond with other people. And then the last layer to develop, what we call the thinking brain or the prefrontal lobes of the cortex, that part is involved in organizing and learning and planning. So when we think about our children and what's happening, we're going to look at how this pandemic is impacting each layer of the brain. So what does the brain like? Well, each part of the brain likes a different thing and feels soothed and calm by something different. So starting at the bottom and working our way up, the lizard brain likes to feel safe. So its focus is on a sense of physical safety and security, that we are, this is a survival focus, that our bodies are okay. The next layer, that blue layer, the relating brain, likes to feel connected, likes to feel in relationship, connected to other people, knowing that they're loved and cared for, and feeling important and valued by the people in their lives. And then that top layer, the thinking brain, that part of the brain likes to tell stories about what's happening, to understand the world around. And especially this part of our brain likes to make predictions about what's going to happen. And of course, predictions are a part of learning. So those are the preferences for each layer in our brain. So moving on, how do we get those needs met? How do we achieve those states of being that these parts of our brain really like? So again, starting from bottom up, the lizard brain, freedom from danger. So just physically being safe, that's what the lizard brain likes. There's enough food, shelter, security. We are safe and we're going to survive. The next layer, the relating brain, how does that part get what they need? Close connections to other people, harmony in relationships, feeling seen and understood by important people in the family, and knowing that they're cared for and loved. So that's what our children's relating brain is needing. The thinking brain, in order to be able to make predictions and learn from experiences, the thinking brain needs routine, consistency, stability, and structure. Those are the aspects of daily life that help the thinking brain feel soothed and secure. So I'm sure none of you can imagine how a pandemic might be impacting our brains. And that's what we'll move on to right now. So moving from the bottom of the brain up to the top, the lizard brain. What's threatening our lizard brain right now? Well, we've got this threat looming of contracting a harmful virus. So there is this sort of omnipresent threat in our minds and in reality that we could contract this virus and become ill. So that threatens our lizard brain's sense of safety and security. And this can be triggered by media consumption and by hearing conversation about the virus. So that's a threat that can be particularly heightened at any given moment when we've got that awareness of, oh my goodness, there's a virus out there. So that's one of the things that's going to be going on and causing that lizard brain layer of the brain to be acting up and potentially becoming dysregulated. The next layer, the relating brain, well, we've got this social distancing practice going on. We have a lack of social connection with our extended supports, our family, friends, neighbors, classmates. We have a lot of disconnection happening as we're confined to our homes. So we're kind of taking away some of those supports that that relating brain is really needing. The other thing that I'm noticing, both among my clients as well as in news articles, is how we've got this cabin fever thing going on. So when we're in close quarters with other people, it's very easy to get on each other's nerves. And so that can really translate into an increase in conflict. So as we have more conflict with family members, our relating brain is not quite getting what it needs. And coming up to the top layer of the thinking brain, our sense of routine and structure and predictability has kind of gone out the window. So we've got schools closed, we've got moms and dads working from home, stores are closed. Those previous routines that we used to structure our daily and weekly lives have been greatly disrupted. So as a result, our thinking brain is not getting that stability that it needs. So you can see on so many different levels, our brains are not receiving the needs, or they're not having the needs met that they need to be calm and collected. So what can happen is we get a lot of dysregulation through the different layers of the brain, and how that can show up, especially in our kiddos and in ourselves, is emotional reactivity, changes in sleeping patterns, changing in eating habits, conflict and fighting. How it shows up is going to be different for each kiddo, but I'm sure as parents you can see a change in your children. I know in my home I've got all daughters, and we're having a lot of tears as we have teenage girls coping with lifestyle changes that are happening as it is, and we're adding some more dysregulation. We have a lot of crying going on in our homes. So I'm not sure what's happening in your households, but I am quite sure that you're noticing the effects that this pandemic is having on our children. So now what? What are we going to do? If we know that our brains are impacted, the different levels of the brains are impacted in these ways, what do we do? How do we help ourselves, and how do we help our children? So what we're going to do is we are going to soothe from the bottom all the way up to the top. So we're starting with the lizard brain. We're going to focus on regulation, having our bodies physiologically regulate. Next, we're going to move up to relate. We want to feel connected and close and secure in relationships. After we've got that physiological regulation, we feel close and in contact with other people, then we're going to move on to reason, and we're going to satisfy the needs of the thinking brain. So soothing from the bottom to the top, regulate, relate, and reason. Okay. So soothing the lizard brain. What can we do to help that lizard brain calm down and reduce the amount of activation that's happening, to help ourselves to feel less like we're on that fight or flight response? So we've got a little picture in here. I hope that you can see him. he's saying, that's right, blame the lizard brain, it's all my fault. As therapists, we like to blame the lizard brain for all kinds of stuff. When we're in couples and we're getting emotionally reactive, we like to blame the lizard brain. When our kids are becoming dysregulated, the lizard brain is a fantastic scapegoat. So I kind of put that guy on there. So one thing that we can do is to limit the amount of information that's provided to children about the pandemic. And one of my colleagues, Lindsay, later on this week is going to be giving a webinar where she talks about how to keep your children informed, but not overwhelm them. So I would encourage you to check out that webinar for some more details about how to share information with your children so they know what's going on, but we're not getting that lizard brain overreactive or overstimulated. So keeping our children informed, but not up to date. Oh my gosh, did you hear? This is the latest number of cases that are infected, and this is how many people are dying. So yeah, please tune into Lindsay's webinar coming up on keeping our children appropriately informed. So where possible, reduce media exposure. So maybe that's checking out the news once a day. Of course, age appropriate, maybe your little guys aren't going to be watching the news. Maybe your teenagers would be involved in watching the news, but making sure that it's not an ongoing, repetitive flood of information about the coronavirus and the pandemic that's happening. And the reason is, again, because we don't want to be continually activating and dysregulating that lizard brain because that's contributing to the emotional flooding and reactivity that we're noticing in our children. Another thing that we can do to soothe the lizard brain is to practice physiological regulation and soothing. So what I mean by this is practicing deep belly breathing, a progressive muscle relaxation, or maybe using a guided meditation. So deep belly breathing is when you are breathing nice and deep, nice and low into the bottom lobes of our lungs, holding it, and then breathing out. So when I'm working with little kids, school-age children, I like to use a visual to help out with this. So we can pretend that we are smelling a flower and our bellies come out, and then exhaling like we're blowing out birthday candles. So having that nice deep belly breathing is a really wonderful way to soothe our physiology, to help us calm and feel safe and secure. As our lungs do that nice deep breathing, they actually send a little message right on over to our lizard brain that effectively says, hey, it's cool, things are all right, we're safe, we're secure. So that's what the belly breathing is. And at the end of the webinar, when I give you the resources, there'll be some links and videos about how to practice and teach your children some deep belly breathing. So a progressive muscle relaxation is a little bit of therapist psychobabble, but basically what it means is you're going to start usually from your feet and work your way all the way up your body, tensing and relaxing your muscles. So you'll start by squeezing your feet and then holding it for a count of 5 and then relaxing. And then the next is to squeeze your feet and your calves. Hold it for a count of 5 and then relax. And you're going to do that all the way up your body and gradually incorporating another group of muscles. So at the very end, you're going to be squeezing your whole body and then relaxing. So sometimes it can be funny to see with your little guys what kind of faces they can make. You usually get a pretty good laugh about that one. So I like to go nice and slow as my kiddos will tolerate through that muscle relaxation. And at the end, our muscles can feel nice and soothed. I really like to encourage that one for bedtime. So when our kiddos are having a hard time falling asleep, a progressive muscle relaxation can help our body to feel, oh, okay, I'm ready to go to sleep. The other thing I've got listed on there is a guided meditation. I really love and promote doing guided meditations and guided relaxations. At the end of the webinar, there'll be a list of resources. Usually I encourage folks to use an app where there's a speaker and they just walk you through a meditation or a relaxation. Oftentimes when we're sitting there and we're just alone with our thoughts, we can have the perception, oh, I'm doing something wrong. I don't really know what's going on. I think I'm doing this right, not right, and this doesn't work for me. So a guided meditation can be really helpful, especially for our kids, because it gives them something to focus on. They can put their attention on the speaker and kind of follow along with what the speaker is encouraging your child to do. So at the end of the webinar, there's a list of resources, apps for both adults and for children for guided meditations. So we've got a few more strategies for soothing our lizard brain. One of them is to really draw attention to the feelings of safety and security that we and our children are currently experiencing. So what we're doing is we're really teaching our brain, right now, I am safe. Right now, I am healthy. So you can do that when you're cuddling with your kids. Maybe you've got them up on your lap and it's a, oh, wow, this feels really nice. Feel how safe we are. You can ask your kids or talk to them. Hey, when do you feel really safe? What makes you feel like, oh, things are gonna be all right? So talking about how we can encourage or cultivate a sense of safety and security at home can be really helpful. So some kids like to curl up with a blanket and their teddy bears and feel really safe in their bed. Some kids like to go have a quiet space in their closet where it's nice and dark. For lots of kiddos, it can also be crawling into mom and dad's bed. That feels like a really safe, secure place to be. So I would encourage you to have a conversation with your kiddos about how they feel safe and secure. Another piece of soothing the lizard brain is to be aware of the messages that our tone of voice and our facial expressions are communicating. Now, our lizard brain is really, really quick at processing information, much, much quicker than our thinking brain. So when I'm speaking to my children, their lizard brain is going to pick up on my face and my tone of voice, and they're instantly going to determine safe, not safe, aggressive, comforting. There's a very quick determination of where I'm at and whether I'm a source of safety or a source of threat. And that happens much more quickly than the words that I'm communicating. So I may be saying something like, go clean your room, please. But if my face looks grumpy or my tone of voice has an edge to it, they're going to pick up on that much more quickly than any of the language that I'm using. So being aware that the messages we send are nonverbal messages through facial expression and through tone of voice are going to be communicating to our children's lizard brains whether this is a time of safety or a time of threat. So we can also be aware when we are talking to other adults or to other people, are we communicating anxiety and fear and worry through our conversations? Nobody is expecting us to be perfect. It's just a matter of being aware of what's going on. Practicing self-soothing. So kiddos have a neurological system that is very open. It's kind of, and it's very easily influenced by the parents' neurological system. So when we ourselves are calm and centered and grounded, that helps our children to be calm, centered, and grounded. When we are aflutter and worried and tense and kind of all over the places, that has an influence on our children's systems. So they're going to be anxious and upset. And I just want to be clear here. Obviously, this is an upsetting time, so please be, kind and gentle with yourself. You don't have to be a Zen master here. We're just acknowledging that we have an influence on our children's levels of anxiety. So sometimes one of the best things that we can do for our children is to work on ourselves and help ourselves to be calm and grounded. So this week, my colleagues Christine and Grant will be giving different webinars with ideas and strategies on how you can practice mindfulness and deal with anxiety. So I do encourage you to check those out for all kinds of ideas on how you can ground yourself as an individual. All right, so soothing the relating brain. What can we do to help our children feel like they are connected to us, that they're loved by us, that we value them and appreciate them? Some of the things I like to encourage here are remembering that relationship comes first. My first priority as I guide my family through this pandemic is our relationships. And I love you teachers dearly. I have many teachers in my life, but at this time, I want my children to feel secure in their relationships. So I may place a little less of a priority on getting the schoolwork done to the extent that maybe it's expected. Maybe. Because I want to emphasize relationship. I want my children to feel connected with each other, to feel connected with me. So anytime we can have some quality family connection, for me, that's really important. The other thing that I want to keep in mind is a balance of my long-term relational goals and my short-term behavioral goals. So I was thinking about this last night as we were cleaning up after dinner. My dishwasher has gone on hiatus, so we are hand washing dishes. So a great example of this on like a low-level topic is I'm watching one of my kiddos wash the dishes and I'm like, those are not very clean. And so I'm thinking in there, my short-term behavioral goal is for her to learn how to clean and wash dishes appropriately. But my long-term behavioral or my long-term relational goal for my daughter is for her to feel like I'm supporting her and encouraging her through learning tasks. So in that moment, I choose not to nitpick and focus on the areas where she's missing, but rather to communicate, thank you. I really appreciate how you're contributing to the family and helping out by washing the dishes. And that's my psychologist language to communicate with you now. It didn't actually sound like that in real life, just so you know. Also in there, connect and then redirect. So when I need to discipline my children or address problematic behavior, what I want to make sure that I'm doing is I'm connecting with the child first. So with smaller kids, I want to come down, meet them at eye level, and I want to make sure that they have a sense of, okay, I'm here. Hey, we're in relationship. So I want to connect with the child, make some eye contact, be close to them, and then I'm going to redirect, maybe talk about some changes like, hey, when you said you were going to do this, you didn't, and then you lied to me and told me you did. No, I'm not cool with that. That's not okay. So we talk about the behavior after we've established relational connection. Other strategies to kind of soothe that relational brain, help our children feel like they're very connected to us, is something called the PACE parenting model. And PACE stands for being playful, being accepting, being curious, and being empathic. Really understanding our children's feelings. So what that looks like is, having fun. Not necessarily everything needs to be serious in family life. So making sure that we're creating space for being silly. One of the things I like to do in my house is have a kitchen dance party. That's funny. We like to talk to each other using silly voices. We have our own weird language that we talk to each other in. They're just all, silly things that we do to have a light feeling in the family. Accepting means accepting our child's reality as it is, even if it might be different from how we see it. So an example here, especially related to what's going on with our pandemic, my kids might say, oh my God, I have no one to talk to. This is awful. This is horrible. This is the worst thing ever. Part of me is going to be like, oh my gosh, no, you can FaceTime your friends, you can text message, you can do all of these things. So I want to correct my child's perception, because in my mind, I think, oh, well, if they just have a correct perception, they're going to feel better. But unfortunately, what happens is the message my kids get is, mom doesn't understand, mom doesn't get it. So what I want to do in those moments is accept my child's reality. Oh man, that must be really hard to feel so lonely or so disconnected. I really get that. I hear what's happening for you. So I want to create a space where my child's reality can exist. And what's happening, or what usually happens, is when I accept and validate and allow for my child's reality, their level of distress kind of comes down, and I didn't have to do anything. To be quite honest, there are times when my children have been so upset, and I'm thinking to myself, I have no idea how to solve this problem. And so I just coach myself, Andrea, just accept the reality, just accept it. And I do that, and I go, yeah, that's hard. I do all of that, and then by the end of it, they're feeling calm, and I didn't need to problem solve. So what they just needed, what my kids needed, was for me to accept their reality as it was for them. Being curious, this is really about showing interest in your child's world, and inviting them to share what's going on for them. So it might be curious about, what books your child is reading, what video games do they like to play, what movies do they like to watch, how do they spend their time when they're by themselves. So really being curious about our children's lives communicates a message, hey, you matter for me. And then being empathic is really very much related to accepting our child's reality. Just really emphasizing, recognizing our children's emotions and validating their feelings, even if we disagree, or even if we wouldn't feel like that. So for example, one of my girls can't see her boyfriend anymore, one of my teenage girls. And so I want to say, well, you know what, you can see him on FaceTime, or when this is all done, you can connect with them. But if I talk like that and I send that kind of message, she's going to feel like I don't get it. I don't understand. And she's going to feel disconnected, and her relating brain is not going to be getting what it needs. So it's a lot of the normalizing and validating of children's emotions. Other things that we can do to soothe the relating brain is to normalize conflict and to plan ahead. So what I mean by this is communicating to the family, yeah, we are stuck in a house together and we're not seeing anybody else. That's hard, and conflict is normal. It's okay for people to get grumpy at times. That's a normal thing. And planning ahead means sitting down and talking with your family and saying, hey, it's normal for us to get grumpy with each other. When that happens, what are we going to do about it? So every family deals with conflict differently. I don't want to give you a prescription about the right way or the wrong way to deal with conflict. I really encourage you to talk it out with your kids, with your family, to figure out like what's going to work for us. How are we as a unit going to deal with the conflict that is inevitable to happen in our families? One of the things that I'm also really hearing from my clients, and as I read in news articles, is that this pandemic is putting a particular degree of strain on couples' relationships. So, note that that kind of tension is really common. You're not alone. And I do encourage you to check out my colleague Ramona's webinar. She's going to be talking about different strategies to help couples support each other and navigate that relational strain during this time of pandemic. Other things to soothe the relating brain, like I'm sure you are already doing, maintaining regular contact with family and friends via phone and video calls, as well as several of my colleagues are going to talk about all different kinds of ways of staying connected with other people, minimizing isolation during this time. My colleagues Cynthia, Teddy, and then student therapist Shaheen and Selena will all be providing some lovely webinars about staying connected through social distancing. So then we're looking at soothing the thinking brain. How do we help that part of our brain to get its needs met? Remember, our thinking brain likes structure, predictability, and routine. So ideas here are to create and post a daily schedule. Make sure that you create time for play, school, rest, family time. When you create your schedule, it's a balance between lining up the day and being flexible. You don't want to be like scheduling down to the 15, 30 minutes. Be loose about it. That's helpful. But it does help kids to know, and us as grown-ups, to know this is going to happen, and then we're going to do this, and then we're going to do that other thing. It provides a sense of predictability when we have lost so much predictability in our daily lives. It provides that structure where our structure has been kind of messed up, to be honest. I would encourage you to consider developing weekly plans. It's not necessary. The daily plan, I think, is really the most important plan. And then one thing I want to also let you know about is that my colleague Rhonda is going to be providing a webinar with specific tips and strategies about how to read with your children. So she's an educational psychologist. She has a lot of really wonderful information to share with you. Last point on here is taking turns for work and parenting responsibilities. So often what's happening in families is both mom and dad, if you happen to have a two-parent home, are home, working from home, and also we've got these kids to care for and raise and apparently educate now. So it can be really helpful on the couple relationship to find a balance where each person is taking their share of time to take care of the kids and also to have time to focus on their work responsibilities. Now, every family is going to have to navigate that differently. So I don't think there's a one size that fits all approach for that, but I do think it's important to have a conversation with your partner about, if there is a partner, about how to share those responsibilities. I've noticed that couples where one person is allowed to devote their time to work and the other parent is responsible for their work and raising the children at the same time, it can lead to a lot of conflict and tension. So talking it out and finding a workable or manageable agreement on sharing those responsibilities, I think, is important. Other strategies for soothing the thinking brain are to maintain consistent bedtimes and meal times. Again, it provides that routine and structure. You know, maybe it's not exactly the same as what it was in school. I'd be the first to admit my kids and myself are sleeping in a little bit later than usual, but in general, having a consistent bedtime, mealtime, waking time is helpful for providing that predictability that the thinking brain really likes. Offering a consistent space for school focus. So having a certain space in your house where that's where the kids go to do their schoolwork, that can be helpful. So during the day, we have our living room and our kitchen devoted to schoolwork. So everybody congregates there during our school time. We work on our school projects, and then when our school time is finished, you know, people go elsewhere. So it provides a sense of routine. Another important piece here is to have really realistic expectations for yourselves and for your children. Sometimes I'm hearing from my clients, they look on Facebook and apparently everybody else has this whole pandemic parenting thing down pat, and they're doing these wonderful educational projects with their kids and baking these magnificent creations and just making the most out of this time. And then when they compare themselves with what they're seeing out there, they're feeling not good enough, you know, feeling like there's something wrong with them when they have a sense that they're not handling the pandemic as well as others appear to be. So I encourage you to be kind to yourself and to be gentle with yourself and to set expectations that are manageable. This is not the time where we want to be feeling like we're not good enough. That's the last thing that we want to do at this time. So in that respect, I encourage you to check out my colleague Christine. She's providing 2 webinars. One of them is on daily parenting strategies, and the other one is on creating a family manifesto. So those can be fantastic talks for you guys to check out. All right, let me check here, see how we are doing. These are some strategies for helping your children through difficult emotions. Name it to tame it. Helping your children to name the emotion, give it a word, helps decrease the intensity of the emotion. Cultivating body awareness, what happens in your body when you get that feeling, when you're feeling angry or you're feeling sad. That can be helpful because your child can then use their body messages to know what's going on for them. So it might be, oh, when I'm so angry, my stomach just, oh, it feels so tight and hot. That's how I know that I'm angry. So a child can use that, oh, I've got that feeling. I'm angry. I need to take some steps to soothe, to feel better, to get through that feeling. I like to use emotion faces, just drawing different faces to show emotions, happy, sad, scared, worried, whatever feelings your child wants to express. And then drawing a face that matches that feeling. You can create kind of a poster, especially for little guys, so they can just look at that poster, look at the face, say that's the one that I'm feeling. So identifying the emotion helps to take the edge off of it. Regulate, relate, reason. Again, when your child has become overwhelmed, start with the physiological regulation, move into relating and connecting with your child, and then reason, talking about what's going on. So an example of that can be, I'm hearing yelling, screaming, crying, some feet stomping, and a door slamming. What my urge might be is to walk up there and say, hey, what's going on? So I want to jump to reason, like, hey, what's happening in this situation? Using a regulate, relate, reason strategy, I'm going to come in sit beside my child, maybe hold them, do a few deep breaths with them as I feel their body relaxing, as I feel that the tension kind of easing from them. I listen for their breathing to see if it's calming. I might say, like, I'm here, it's going to be okay. And as they get more calm and feel in connection with me, then I'm going to move into reason. Like, hey, what happens? What's going on there? Other strategies for difficult emotions are creating a self-soothing toolkit. So putting together a little box of, they can be fidgets or any sorts of other things you can use to feel better. These are all things that I usually talk about in therapy sessions with children and parents together, how to create some of these things to do regulation at home. So if you're ever interested in like a parent consult or working with your child specifically, these are the sorts of things that we would be exploring. So I'm just gonna glide past those a little bit in the interest of time. Last, these are the list of resources that I promised for you. And when we post them online, each of these will have a link to a website where you can learn more about that particular resource and how to access it. So thank you. That went a little bit longer than I expected. That's what I have to share today. And Nicole, maybe there's some questions that you'd like to
Yeah,
to
if you want to stop your screen sharing, that would be great. And we will absolutely post your slideshow on your bio page on the website. And eventually we'll also have a blog, and we'll post this video if people would like to share it with others along with the slideshow as well. But we'll make sure we get those resources into people's hands quickly. That was a great presentation. Thank you. Yeah, lots of practical things I can start trying this afternoon. So that's great. Any questions? Or I'm looking in the chat and also under the Q&A. Any comments or questions that I can share with Andrea here, or that you'd like me to offer to the community of people who are here with us? Yeah. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, just as we give people a chance to maybe formulate a couple of questions, so we've got about 10 minutes here. I'll say that I'm really looking forward to the weather turning. I feel like with kids in particular, that is going to be a huge advantage for us when we can get them outside a bit easier, hey?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. We've got a couple of great questions here. How much should you share about the pandemic with a 3- and 5-year-old?
Okay, that's a really great question. So I think with a 3- and a 5-year-olds, what's helpful is for them to know that there are some germs out there, and that the germs can make people really sick. And so we are staying inside in order to avoid getting these germs and to avoid sharing them with other people, because we don't want a lot of people to get sick. So that's probably the amount of information that I would share with a 3- or 5-year-old. But again, my colleague Lindsay will be offering a lovely webinar about talking to your kids about the virus itself.
Also, I'll add, if you go to our website, we've created a resource page just for resources related to COVID now. It's under a tab called resources at the top, and there are some really creative books for very little kids that people have created that we've uploaded to there, kind of a makeshift storybook, and also a couple of videos that are good tools for helping giving that information to kids as well. So you might want to check that out. Another question here is, are there any regulation strategies that you would particularly recommend for kiddos with ADHD?
Okay, yeah, so with kiddos with ADHD, I really encourage them to be practicing with the mindfulness and the belly breathing. So using a couple of apps, let me just review my list here. Mind Yeti and Breathe Kids are two fantastic apps to use for children. They're short periods of time, which is really helpful for those children who have short spans of attention that we're working on. So what I like to do with those kiddos is, once a day practicing those mindfulness skills. Over time, it's going to be building their ability to self-regulate. That's my go-to for sure with kiddos with ADHD.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a comment here that's just so true, just that this is a particularly difficult time for parents who have kids with special needs as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in those particular situations, it's really important to be compassionate with yourself and really have realistic expectations about what you are asking of yourselves and your children. And that's where I find I really rely on that, put relationship first. Family and connection is first.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Another great question here, I think a lot of people will relate to. Any tips for regulating two children, so siblings who aren't getting along? And she kind of adds to that here. Like the older 5-year-old might say things, oh, you like, their sibling better than me, no one cares about me. So it sounds like a little bit of competition for attention from a parent here, and also some sibling rivalry, which happens with kids at any age too. Any suggestions for that?
Absolutely. So what I want to do is first start by validating and accepting the child's emotions. Like, oh my gosh, that feels really hard. It is really tough for you to feel like, mommy and daddy like your brother or sister more than you. That's really painful. So we want to create that space, allow for that feeling, make sure that child knows that we get just how painful that is. And then we can move into the reassurance of, what, mommy and daddy love you and your brother just the same, that you're both very special and very important to us. And then I might ask the child, like, what are those times where you really feel like mommy and daddy love you? And help the child to tell you what sort of their love language is. And I didn't include it on the resources, but related to this question is the Love Languages for Children. It's a wonderful book where you can really tune into what helps your particular child feel loved.
Nice. And a comment in the chat here of someone just really appreciating that strategy of acknowledging the kids' emotions rather than going straight into reasoning. And a few people here really just really saying that they appreciated the way that you're relating this to the brain as well. Yeah. Another question here, having a tough time with a single child at home, 11 years old and now unable to get herself to sleep. Any tips for finding alone time with a spouse? Yeah.
Okay.
Couple questions in there. Yeah. Very real challenges. Yeah.
Sure. So specifically with the sleep, what I encourage is to, do your sleep hygiene. I know a lot of us are using a lot more screen time than we normally would. I get that. But we want to see if we can reduce it, make sure we're not having screen time in the 2 hours before bed. Have a consistent bedtime routine. Maybe that includes a shower or a bath or reading for a little bit. So creating a structure that's very predictable for bedtime. And then in the falling asleep, I like to switch the focus from falling asleep to I just need to rest. So the more we tell ourselves, I have to fall asleep, I have to fall asleep, the more upset we get and the more anxious we feel and the less likely we are to fall asleep. So encouraging ourselves to feel like I just need to rest right now. It's okay if I'm not falling asleep. This is just a quiet time for my body to rest. And that's also where I have found that guided meditations can be helpful for dealing with sleep. Now, alone time for couples. Um, Typically, alone time for couples after, your child has gone to bed. I'd say, an 11-year-old is probably old enough. You can say, you know what, mommy and daddy just need some mom and dad time. So we are going to do X, Y, and Z while you do this, and to communicate the message that that's okay. It doesn't mean that we don't want you here. It's just the mommy and daddy also need their grown-up time.
Yeah. We're launching in the next few days. This is just kind of coming together for us as we think about just brainstorm ideas as a team, what we can do to support a group for couples, actually over 5 or 6 weeks with a couple of our therapists on the team. And so we're hoping maybe people will use it as a date night. And we'll try to keep it fun, but really address, some of the challenges and stress and strategies that couples can use through this time as well. So I know sometimes having something you're committed to can kind of help with making the time for that as well. Maybe we'll got time for 1 or 2 more, I think, here. So someone who signed in a bit late and asked if we address this, but I think it's a great question. Has only one child, 6 years old, and they're working at home, and their son is on the screen almost constantly. He's not one to color or play by himself. And he says, sorry, just looking for either reassurance that this is normal or otherwise ideas for self-play. He has loads of toys. We can all relate to the stuff is there. Yeah, but how do you get them to engage with it? Yeah, screen time's a real challenge for us right now. And maybe we have different expectations than we did before about that in our families. Eh?
Absolutely, absolutely. Again, this is I promised myself I wasn't going to use the word unprecedented because I've seen that everywhere. This is a different time, right? There are a lot of changes that are happening, and we may not be maintaining the same expectations that we had before, and that's okay. So there may be some more screen time. Maybe not on the extreme side, but I think it's important to be compassionate with yourself around that, rather than shaming yourself about your child's consumption of media or screen time. One of the things I was also thinking is the possibility of breaking it up. So maybe your child has their screen time for a period of time, you work from home, and then you take a break and you do something together. So you kind of switch back and forth so that we're not having those long chunks where a child is out of relationship.
Mm-hmm. We're using this strategy a little bit, although my kids are older, of kind of earning some screen time. So, if you do, a certain amount of reading, then maybe you can have, do a similar amount of time with screen time, and just to kind of at least balance it a little bit too. But yeah, as we know, every strategy doesn't work every day and not with every kid. So we're having to be pretty creative, but yeah, that's a very real question. Looks like we've reached, let's see here, reached the end of our questions. One more comment here. Oh yeah, just that person thanking you for the reassurance. Yeah, that's similar of what they've been doing, is trying to kind of balance. And yeah. I just keep hoping that kids will see the rules, the pandemic rules, as just different than normal rules, and we will be able to go back to the way things operate in our families before. But we're all doing the best we can. Yeah. So thank you very much to you, Andrea, and thank you to everybody who took some time today to be with us. And I'm sure Andrea is open for questions following this. You can send them to info@riversedgecounseling.com, and our admin team will forward any questions to Andrea. Also, if you have any questions for me, the upcoming webinars or groups or other resources we're putting together. If you have any other ideas for webinars or groups or anything that we can do in this time to help, please just let me know. Yeah. So thank you, and the best to you for the rest of your week. Take care.